Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to take a moment for everyone to log in, join the call. So take a moment. We'll start in about 30 seconds. No rush. Grab your tea, grab your coffee, whatever it takes. Also, thank you to those of you who tuned in last month. We had a really great discussion with Saurabh on APT threat groups and really breaking down malware toolkits. So really looking at what that malware is and how to use Yara scanning to discover these malware signatures. This month, though, we have a really exciting session, and I'm just personally really excited to have Offer on for the first time ever for Uptycs Live, I think. So she's done some incredible work here at Uptycs so far to help build our vulnerability management capabilities out, and I'm just really excited to share it all with you. So without further ado, though, let's go ahead and get started for today. So, hey, Afra, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have you on. I know you have a really interesting background. Why don't you just take a moment and introduce yourself to everyone?
Thanks for that, Jeremy. Pleasure's all mine. So hi, everybody. My name is Afra Ansaria. I am from India originally, but right now I'm based out of Boston. I graduated recently from my master's in computer science as of 2021. And my research was predominantly in vulnerability management and trying to help organizations figure out what other tools out there that would help them prioritize these vulnerabilities better. And I really got interested in that area, and I wanted to explore further as to how are these research topics explored in the industry. And so I joined Uptycs. Uptycs is a great company. I've enjoyed my growth so far. I've been a product manager here for past 6 months or so, I think. And it has been an incredible experience. I've met very talented people out here who have helped me understand the vulnerability management better, as well as like I got to learn on how do users think and customers sort of try to absorb these important solutions in a better fashion. And yeah, so I'm really excited to share with you guys the work that the team and I have worked on in the past few months, and it's an exciting space with exciting solutions out there. But yeah, I'm gonna let you take the mic from
No,
here,
that's awesome.
Jeremy.
Thanks for that great introduction. So now a quick introduction about myself if we haven't met yet. I am a technical product marketer here at Uptycs. Prior to Uptycs, I worked at Deloitte focusing on day-to-day security operations and systems engineering for government clients with actually a focus on vulnerability management. So this stuff is pretty close to home for me. So yeah, in my spare time, I also enjoy playing and watching soccer. So, Offer, it's your first time on. I wanted to ask you a few fun, just kind of rapid fire questions just to break the ice, have a little fun, and get to know you a little better. So first off, what is your favorite movie? And second, what is the best dish you can cook?
Man, such tough questions. But I'd say My Cousin Vinny, that would be my favorite because that's something that I watched very recently again. And in terms of favorite food that I can cook, man, can that be the only food that I can cook? Because if that's the case, then that would definitely be noodles, because I think that's a safe bet.
That's awesome.
But yeah,
Well, thanks for playing along. My Cousin Vinny is such a good movie. So that is a great choice. That is such a good one.
yeah, really good one.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So we have a really exciting session today and a lot to cover. So I'll quickly go over this agenda slide. Thank you so much, first off, for the introductions, Afra. So a few housekeeping items before we get into it, although this webinar is expected to go around 25 to 30 minutes. The webinar itself will be split into two sections. So first, a discussion that I'll lead kind of on the pain points of being a security analyst in charge of actually running vulnerability scans and managing remediation. And this will then lead into an overview of the solution to these pain points. And then the second part of this webinar will be actually more of the fun stuff with the live demo and kind of the deep dive of these solutions on the Uptycs platform. So we have time at the end for an open Q&A, but of course, please ask questions along the way and we'll keep an eye on the questions box. So in this slide, I want to walk you through the daily life of a security practitioner who monitors and manages vulnerabilities or vulnerability scanning. So let's break down these pain points, and then on the next slide, we can identify solutions. I won't go through every question on the slide. Please feel free to skim through and just see how many relate to you and your team as current pain points. Sadly, what I've seen right now is vulnerability management should be one of the simplest and most streamlined processes in security. Instead, it's just riddled with these questions and pain points. So first, let's talk about visibility and getting real-time looks at your environment. Teams consistently struggle with real-time visibility into their assets. For example, maybe your current solution causes a high spike in resource utilization, so you only run it daily or weekly rather than multiple times a day. Or maybe it isn't able to cover 100% of your asset types across endpoints, containers, clouds, VMs. Next, you may have alerts in a dashboard configured, but for visibility, the backlog of CVEs to be remediated makes the noise drown out any new findings from standing out. So now let's say you finally see the finding. Because of the noise in the backlog, it's maybe been delayed a few days or a week. You look it over, it seems worth raising, but the priority is really unclear because you can't just go off CVSS numbers for medium, high, or critical findings. So if the finding is brought up in, say, a weekly or biweekly vulnerability meeting, but questions arise such as what assets are running this software? Is this a false positive? Which teams maintain the assets this software is running on? And another major question that people are just barely starting to explore around prioritizing is, are people actively exploiting this finding? Or what's the current threat landscape for this gap? Is this in the arsenal of the threat actors? And finally, from a reporting perspective, everyone here involved in vulnerability management knows that the actual management and reporting is probably just as hard, if not more of a pain point than the discovery and prioritization phase. It's important to have reports that quickly and easily synthesize the overall view of your environment health for, say, a leadership or compliance report, but you also need reports that can quickly supply enough information to your DevSec teams to actually remediate findings. So now that we've touched on a few of those pain points, I want to look at what solutions can actually alleviate that endless cycle of patching and the difficulties specifically around, first, real-time comprehensive visibility, second, around prioritizing these assets and CVEs, and third and finally, actually reporting up to your leadership or from a compliance or a team perspective. So for the first point on real-time visibility, it's vital that solutions are able to achieve 100% coverage and work across all flavors of operating systems and asset types, ranging in size from, say, traditional endpoints all the way down to containers and micro VMs. So this 100% coverage combines with a low CPU cost of scanning, meaning that a strong solution lets you scan your entire environment consistently, quickly, and confidently. So it really solves that problem of lag time between a finding being published and ultimately being seen by an analyst. Next, kind of after discovering the vulnerabilities and encouraging a high cadence of scanning, the next big pain point I want to talk about is on the top right of this slide around prioritization. So we talked in the last slide how difficult it is to know the relevancy of the CVE to your specific environment and being certain about what the remediation steps are. So the important functions at this stage from my personal experience was around having that clear context and immediate answers to the questions we posed on the last slide around what is the fix? Are threat actors actively exploiting this finding? And who on my team owns this asset? Finally, we've discovered the finding on our network, done the research to prioritize the finding. Now it's time to address the reporting problem. So good reporting solutions make it easy to pre-build dashboards that update in real time as the data streams in. So this means we're actually eliminating the work of manually creating reports every time we run a scan or have new updated data. And what at the core of this functionality also means is that custom dashboards can be tailored to report findings to my technical team, my DevOps team that needs remediation guidance, and my leadership team that might just want a macro overview of our environment's health. So I just talked for a little while. I want to kind of pause there and without going into it too deeply, I kind of want to hand it over to you, Afra. I'll let you start sharing your screen and kind of dive into what these solutions would actually look like in practice and kind of getting hands-on with the demo itself. So any thoughts around these use cases as you take over?
Absolutely. I think I'm definitely really was finding your presentation very interesting. There were certain points where I was like, I actually haven't thought about it in that way. And so great job on the presentation. Sure. And I think you did a good job of talking about the main pain points in terms of prioritization and how do we go about fixing these vulnerabilities that we find on the customer's fleet. And I think these are the main questions that we have been trying to ask ourselves here at Uptycs in order to solve these problems and bring out a very simple and intuitive solutions to the user. And so we try to work on certain products the past few months, and I'm really happy to share it with you guys. So let me just go ahead and start presenting my screen.
Awesome. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
And awesome. And I can see your screen. Great. Perfect.
Great. Awesome. So Uptycs essentially, what we try to do over here at Uptycs is to make sure that we provide you the relevant information when it comes to vulnerability as soon as possible with the latest updates that are available out there. And so we try to collect this information from like various sources. We try to collect the CV IDs, the different scores, and the information related to all these vulnerabilities. And we aggregate this through various sources that is available out there, from security advisors to simple websites such as NVD. And we have a rich information of close to like 60,000 vulnerabilities in our knowledge base. Now, with the rich information that is available to us, we try to detect any of such vulnerabilities that might be available on your asset fleet. And the good thing is that, like, as soon as you try to plug in your assets onto Uptycs OS query with the Uptycs OS query agent, when you try to upload it onto the Uptycs management tool, we are able to show this results to the customers in a short period of time. In a period of less than 6 hours, a user would be able to see the vulnerabilities and detect any of the threats that have been detected on their fleet in a very short period of time. 6 hours is the most that is the default option that we provide, but users can obviously shorten this time and make the scan time much more shorter than this. So over here on this page, you see a sample of how we essentially detect the vulnerabilities on your fleet. So over here, you can see how we list down all the CVEs that have been detected on your fleet. And we try to prioritize this based on certain factors that we have deemed as important. Some of the key factors that you must have come across in your organization is, of course, like, you have CVS score, you have the severity, which sort of helps you figure out like what are the vulnerabilities that you need to focus on. But also you need to consider features such as like, hey, when was this vulnerability actually detected on my fleet? Like, was it something detected that was very recently, or was it something, or was it a vulnerability that was detected like a year ago or like 2 years ago? So that's one of the important factors that help you decide, that helps you understand what is the importance of the vulnerability. The other key feature that is important to understand the vulnerability is also the exploit information. Exploit information is essentially, we try to show what are the vulnerabilities that are out there that are easily exploitable. What I mean to say is that, like, no vulnerabilities are actually created equal, right? Like, some of the vulnerabilities are much more severe than the others. And the severity doesn't just have to be in the CVS score or in the severity level, but it can also be through the exploit and the fix available level as well. And when I say exploitability, it essentially means that if there are any vulnerabilities out in your assets that are easily exploitable by an attacker, you might want to focus on it much faster or earlier than the other vulnerabilities. And similarly, we've got another feature for you guys, which is called the fix available information. So there's a vulnerability out there in your platform that is exploitable by an attacker, but there's actually a fix available for this vulnerability, then that should easily help you sort these vulnerabilities and focus on these vulnerabilities almost right away. So for example, on the screen, when I enter as a user, like, one of the first things that I could make use of the data that's being presented to me is that, hey, like, I can see these vulnerabilities that are actually exploitable in the wild. We try to provide this information further by clicking on the CV ID, and you can see like the information related to the CVE as well as the exploit information that is available out there. But I'll let the customer decide and figure it out by themselves for the sake of simplicity. The other key feature that I was talking about was the fix availability. So if there are any vulnerabilities out there that has a fix of information, like a remediation available, we try to highlight that information as well, in the hope that that would essentially help the users prioritize these vulnerabilities much better. as now you can ask like, okay, what can I do once I figure out these vulnerabilities that exist in my system? You can actually just download these results in a very simple and intuitive report system. So in order to help that, we have provided a download feature that can help you download these latest results and plug it into your third-party tools that can help you either export these results to your other tools that you're currently using in your pipeline, or just like, present it in a dashboard, or sort of like inform this to your other teams that are that could find this information very helpful. So download querying is like another great feature that would help you solve this issue. We have also tried to provide or rather like we also try to catalog this information, this data across different matrices. So the first matrix, first row is very simple and intuitive. It's a vulnerability platform. We try to simplify this further and provide the same view, but across different dimensions. One of the dimensions is across the package level as well. Package level, without getting into further detail, is essentially going to help you understand what are the exact packages that have been detected as vulnerable on your fleet. And by that, I mean to say is that across all your fleet, Uptycs, with its help of OS Query Agent, would be able to explicitly mention that these are the packages that have been detected on your particular platform. And all you need to do is actually figure out what are the packages that are affected, and if there's actually a fix available for these packages or not. And so this is a really nice way of actually just zeroing down in terms of like sort of like tunneling down your vision and just focusing on the packages that are vulnerable, rather than just keep it more broad and assume that, okay, like, these are the assets that are actually affected. So hoping that package level would also be like a good dimension for our users to understand and download these results and sort of like investigate the vulnerabilities better. So we try to sort of like give as much rich information to our end users and provide better control to our users, so that they can either play around with our data or like sort of make sense with the data, right, Jeremy? Because the way like we were talking about the problems earlier was that like, hey, there's so much data out there, like how do we actually make sense of it? Like, even if we try to make sense, how do we even prioritize these results, right? And like how do we even fix these? So we try to like solve these questions by showing you the data in a way that makes the most sense, and by taking out a lot of the information that might not be the best for any user to see it at the first glance. Speaking of which, we try to provide a very intuitive and simple UI overview screen, which essentially would help any person who's landing on your vulnerability management tool. Within a short period of time, the user would be able to grasp an idea as to what exactly is going on in their asset management. So we try to highlight the key demographics, or like the key changes that we've detected across the fleet. We mentioned certain criteria such as, hey, what is the asset health across your entire coverage? What it essentially tries to say is that, like, of the assets that you have installed the OS Query Agent on, and of the assets that are actually running this OS Query Agent, almost all of them have more than one vulnerability detected on it, which is not a good sign. But that essentially is the whole idea of the vulnerability screen, is that we are trying to let you focus on the key critical aspects in your data that you should just start focusing on right away, just start fixing right away, rather. Similarly, we've got different widgets based on like severity. You can start to focus on the assets which are much more critical than the assets which have vulnerabilities that are not as critical. You've got vulnerability by release date. This is one of my favorite widgets. This essentially helps you focus only on those vulnerabilities that were released in a very short period of time. So we try to segment it across the days on which the vulnerabilities were published on NVD or by the security advisors that essentially is what I mean to say by release date. And then we've got similar widgets, which is in terms of vulnerability by severity, vulnerabilities detected. I let the user figure, like, try to figure that out when they are playing around with our feature. This is a brief preview of like, how we sort of like convey or represent our data and provide this rich information to the user through a vulnerability management tool. Along with the vulnerability management tool, Uptycs has also provided a very strong and important features to our customers with the help of the OS Query agent. And one of those cool features is essentially like the custom query packs. Now, it might sound like a very, what do you say, like, a heavy word like a query pack, but what it essentially tries to say is that like, Uptycs tries to provide the control back to the user through the OS query scan, to the OS query agent that is running on your endpoint. And by that, what I mean to say is that through query packs, user would be able to tap into the feature of OS query scan engine and create their own custom SQL queries. These custom SQL queries can be like customized by the user. User can say that, hey, I'm interested in finding out the processes that actually have a certain vulnerability running on them. So for example, I can talk about the log4j vulnerability that was detected, few months ago. And here I had created a query pack that was specific to the log4j vulnerability. And what I tried to do is that I was trying to figure out all the processes that had any of the processes running under Java and any of the log4j processes that were running on my assets. And I tried to extract as much information as possible across all my assets. So I do not just have to wait for the security advisors to come up with a solution or to security advisors to come up with a detailed report. If I have a threat intel team in my company that can help me figure out what exactly are these processes, Query Pack is a really good way and almost an instant way for you to figure out and find out where exactly does the vulnerability lie on your asset up to the process level. And this is a very, very powerful and strong feature that can help you almost give the transparency till the processes level. It would give you the visibility right into the process level that can help you figure out and resolve any of the issues almost right away. Very important feature, and would highly recommend users to either ask about it or to either explore it by themselves. The other cool and the last feature that I want to talk about during this demo is essentially the custom dashboards. Now, custom dashboards essentially are like, like the name says, you can create your own customized dashboard results. So what I essentially try to say is that either through the query packs or through your own SQL queries that you are interested in, you can try to view this data in a fashion that is as applicable to your use case. So for example, here on the screen, I try to pull up a certain information. I'm trying to create a custom dashboard which can help me highlight the top 100 vulnerabilities that were detected on my platform. And in essence, you can try to pull up this data through the SQL commands that are available at your fingertips, and then pull out the respective results through the SQL query, and then use these results and try to display it in a way that makes the most sense. So Uptycs allows you to punch in the queries that you're interested in. Once you've got the results, you can essentially take those results and try to visualize it in a fashion that makes more sense to you. So as you can see on the right-hand side, there are a bunch of like different visualization tools that are available. You can try to plot it across different like dimensions that you're interested in, or you can try to just have it in a simple table manner, or you can just like just do it in a section card and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to say is that you can essentially like display it in a manner that is that you prefer is the best for you. And this can actually help you create dashboards that are very applicable to your use case, which can change over a period of time. Like I know there are companies in which teams use the same management tool and over a long period of time, and the use case changes month to month based on the company's priorities. Here is a sample of like a custom dashboard that we have created internally using the custom dashboard feature. So we try to like pull up the data. This is not something that we try to create from scratch. We just like had to pull up the data, figure out like what are the visualization tools that makes the most sense, throw in the x-axis and the y-axis in naming convention there, names for that. And then we have it like, we were able to like create our own custom dashboards and use this for our own internal purposes. In the same fashion, like would really encourage our customers to tap into some of these like custom support, that custom tools that Uptycs has to provide to our users, because these are really important features that would help a user tap into the potential that OS Query has to offer through Uptycs vulnerability management tool. Yeah. Off to you, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for walking us through all that. And I think it's clear to see that we talked about it in kind of the discussion section, and we've talked about it ourselves just kind of outside of this call. But, CVS scores and kind of the metrics around a vulnerability are not necessarily the main way to prioritize a vulnerability. And you all this contextual evidence to be able to say, how are we actually going to address these vulnerabilities? How are we going to actually view them and prioritize them and report them? And I think what you've done is just a fantastic job of kind of guiding us from just the basic level of, okay, let's see where these vulnerabilities exist, on what assets they exist, but then being able to kind of build out this story around them, using that log4j example of, really hunting for these vulnerabilities within our environment and kind of taking a proactive approach. I think that's fantastic. So thank you.
That's correct.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
Pleasure's all mine. It's like you said, it's very important to understand, like, what are the vulnerabilities that I'm looking at and how does it actually make sense? Like, why is it so relevant to me? And the team at Uptycs has tried to do a good job in trying to represent this data in a very simple and intuitive manner that is easy to consume, so that user doesn't have to spend a lot of time on the platform, but sort of like use the data and just like, get along and with the rest of the task.
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to be mindful of everyone's time on this call. So I'm going to kind of move ahead to the Q&A section. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to ask them. If you have to drop, feel free to drop us an email as well. I've seen a couple come in kind of throughout the call, so I'll kind of address those right now. But yeah, if you have any questions kind of now or later, Afra and I love talking about this stuff. So feel free to, shoot us a note after this call or any other time as well, if you want like a deeper dive or just kind of an extra look at some of the stuff that we were talking about. So let's see, let me read one of the first ones I saw was for the exploit available information. What is the source for exploit available information? Can you explain more on what exploit information means? So Afra, do you want to take this one?
That's a good question. Absolutely. So we try to gather exploit information through multiple sources out there and aggregate this internally in our knowledge base. Seesaw is one of the prominent ones that we try to map the CVEs with the exploit information that is available. Exploit DB is another helpful source that we have looked into and try to gather the information from their database. But we are trying to expand this as we speak, and look at other sources that have the exploit information available, so that we can provide this information as to the best extent as possible. Also, the threat intel team at Uptycs tries to figure out the different ways that a vulnerability can be exploitable, which also helps us figure out and prioritize these vulnerabilities better. Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. And I saw the other question was asking actually, so in the description for the webinar, you mentioned vulnerability management can help support DevOps or container deployments. Can you expand on that? Yeah, definitely. So I think that's a really good question. One thing for me is that strong vulnerability management kind of helps this DevOps process in multiple ways. And two of the main ones I like to think of it is this snowball effect of the earlier in the process that you're able to eliminate a vulnerability, the better the chance that it doesn't exist in runtime. So if you're able to kind of stop these vulnerabilities and catch them and remediate them on, say, your build server before you deploy and before they're kind of in that runtime stage, you're able to reduce the chance that this, one vulnerability turns into hundreds of deployments and hundreds of security gaps in runtime. And the second thing is that vulnerability management kind of supports runtime processes as well, because especially with containers and DevOps, you want these to be immutable. The idea is that once a container hits runtime, ideally, until it comes down again, you're not going to touch these. They're going to be doing their specific job and then be brought down. So whatever they're sent out there with in a vulnerability sense, those are security gaps for their entire lifespan. So you want to be able to catch these vulnerabilities during the DevOps process, encourage your DevOps folks to really feel empowered to remove these vulnerabilities, remediate them in a timely fashion, and make your runtime production much more secure. So I think that that's a really good point, and I'm glad we were able to touch on it. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Offer any closing thoughts before we kind of let everyone go?
Yeah, I was really glad to actually present and demo the product that we have out here. A quick note is that like we are working on some certain features that we would be rolling in the next few months. Some of which is essentially like adding an exception to vulnerabilities, or like having an internal score that can help users figure out if the score actually like help them prioritize the vulnerabilities better, and also providing a way to upload custom CVEs score. So lots of exciting features coming the next few months, and really looking forward to what we are going to offer. So would let the users would be happy if the users stay tuned to it. And yeah, just looking forward to any of the questions that you guys have. Feel free to reach out either to me or Jeremy, and we'd be happy to answer those.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you for joining us this morning. And yeah, hope you have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week. And yeah, enjoy the rest. Thank you guys. Have a great one.
Thank you.